Senator Mullen.
Well, that caught me off guard. Thank you so much, and Admiral, good to see you again. If you would indulge me for a second, I tell you, I've been observing your husband Jim and Isabella behind you, and you guys have raised a great daughter. It touched my heart when Jim was mentioned a while ago about supporting you and the family supporting you, and your daughter reached over and patted him on the leg. And I thought, you know, as a father of 6 children, 3 daughters, that touched me. And so congratulations, Admiral, on having a strong family. And Jim, considering that the Admiral's gone all the time, you've raised a great daughter. And you can see there's a bond there. Families go through a lot while you're serving the country. And as it has been mentioned multiple times, we want to thank them as much as anybody. And so thank you so much. A couple of things I want to talk about. First, I want to talk about the University of Oklahoma. The Navy has been investing in research on unmanned systems, but systems seem to have trouble getting out of R&D and actually finding those systems. For example, the University of Oklahoma has been doing some amazing work with the radar navigation for unmanned surface vehicles in denied GPS environments. How can these systems get out of the Death Valley and into the hands of the warfighter faster?
Senator Mullen, thank you for your time the other day, and thank you for
Absolutely.
your recognition of my family. I also agree they're great.
Right.
As far as the unmanned systems, and more broadly, getting these technologies out to the hands of the warfighter faster, this is a critical focus area of me, and if confirmed, I will continue to focus in this area. It has to be a partnership with the commercial sector, with academia, and with our research institutions that we have within the Navy to bring those capabilities out into the field so we can experiment with them, test with them, get best of breed, learn a little, test a little, learn a lot. That needs to be our approach. And so working with the initiatives under the Replicator initiative and standing up our own Disruptive Capabilities Office, which is based on the work in our Unmanned Task Force, we look to be able to speed these through the process more effectively in the future.
What are we doing to engage our commercial partners to maybe help with that and help facilitate that?
So the Unmanned Task Force that we've had for the last 2 years was really designed to go out and survey the landscape of what is out there and what's available in the commercial industry. They would have our known gaps that we're trying to fill, and then they would try to marry those up with some of these technologies. So again, we could bring them out into the Navy and test them. So we're continuing with that effort, and I think it's been very fruitful, and if confirmed, I look forward to continuing that.
Thank you. Switching gears a little bit, there's been a report that as evidently a sensitive but not classified document was released. One of our news agencies got hold of it, and it was talking about the capacity of the ship building and the shipyards inside China, and specifically said they're able to produce handle a capacity around 23.2 million tons compared to the U.S. of about 100,000 tons, which is about a 232 times greater capacity to build and maintenance their fleet. And regardless if it's actually quoted by him or not, and I'll probably mess up his last name, but I think everybody will understand what I'm saying, Admiral Yodamoto, where he has famously said, which it's debated if he actually said it or not, I fear all we've done is awaken a sleeping giant after the attack of Pearl Harbor. We don't know if he actually said it or not, but we do know that he was very against attacking the U.S. He was concerned about our industrial complex and the way that we could speed up and be prepared for war. And he didn't think there was a possible way to win because of that capacity. One of our largest adversaries now has that capacity, and anytime you talk to anyone in the industrial complex side, from whatever we're building to whatever we're trying to advance, every time it's 5 to 7 years before it comes out. I have huge concerns with that. And considering you're going to be over naval operations, What are we going to do about that to be able to put the fear of God in our adversaries that we can spin up and we will spin up if you attack us?
Senator Mullen, if confirmed, this is one of my main focus areas. Again, I watch with concern the building capacity of China. It isn't all about capacity. It's also about capability. It's about manning. It's about munitions. And it's about that ecosystem of warfighting that we will do with the joint force. We have the most formidable force today, and we will continue to have that in the future, and I'll work to that if confirmed.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, and I'll recognize myself here for 5 minutes, and I want to follow up on Senator Mullen's questions. This is what we mostly talked about, is what he brought up in his question. So when I met you, Admiral, earlier this week, we talked about our shipbuilding capacity and what the Navy can do and what are the Navy's responsibilities when it comes to coordinating with and supporting the private sector. So I want to talk a little bit about that and a little bit about MARAD. So just specifically, Admiral, what do you believe the Navy's responsibilities are when it comes to supporting private sector shipbuilding to ensure that we have the sea lift capability that we need?
Well, Senator Kelly, thank you again for your time. And, you know, sea lift is one of the core enduring functions of the Navy. And I believe our responsibility is to continue to indicate what is that capacity that we need to be able to move our force around. I think if you look at the conflict in Ukraine, you continue to see the importance of sea lift. And as we do all of our war gaming and congested logistics study, we need more logistic ships to be able to do that. So defining that and providing headlights and continuing in our three-pronged approach, which is, you know, continuing to do a maintenance life extension for our existing ships, buying used ships, and continuing to procure new. That's really where the Navy needs to focus its efforts.
Do we feel like we have the sea lift capacity we need right now?
Well, we need more sea lift capacity. As we continue to look to, especially in the buy use program, this is a great opportunity for us, and we think it will be very cost effective going forward.
And you mentioned contested logistics, which implies, you know, that there is a risk that we are going to lose some of the capacity we have today. So we need additional, you know, capacity. And, you know, last year's defense bill required that MARAD conduct a national maritime strategy, which meets both the commercial and military needs of our country. Let me talk a little bit about the disparity between ourselves and China, which Senator Mullen was getting to. He talked about China having a 232x capacity over us to build and maintain ships. Right now, China has 5,500 ocean-going merchant vessels, and we have 85. Or somewhere in the mid-80s. So with regards to MARAD's strategy, their national maritime strategy that they need to supply to us, how is the Navy planning to participate in the execution of that strategy?
Senator, you know, we have a strong working relationship with both the Transcom commander and with the MARAD administrator, Ann Phillips. And she came and spoke at our Sea, Air, and Space Symposium earlier this year and really laid out what she's doing to improve MARAD's capability and where the Navy could support. Right now, we are not participating in their study, but I appreciate you bringing it to my attention in the call. And I will, if confirmed, and as the Vice Chief, will connect with Administrator Phillips and understand how we can best support their study going forward.
Thank you, Admiral. In my remaining time, totally different topic. The President recently, he hosted a trilateral summit at Camp David with the United States, Japan, and South Korea, and I was encouraged by some of the progress there. We've had a deep partnership with Korea and Japan for years. I used to be stationed in Japan in the late 80s, early 90s, and it's great to see this cooperation continuing and actually growing. Admiral, I know you've had some experience leading multilateral exercises. I used to participate in those as a pilot, Team Spirit, Cope Thunder, those and some others. And this is just one of the many ways that we can strengthen our cooperation with our key partners. So I just want to ask briefly in my remaining time, given the significance of sea power in the Western Pacific and the importance of these partnerships for our own security interests, how do you plan to approach naval collaboration and increasing interoperability between the U.S., Japan, and South Korea?
Senator Kelly, our allies and partners really are our key strategic advantage. And if confirmed, I will continue to provide opportunities for exercises to bring together not only those two key allies, but also others. In fact, next week, I'll be hosting over 105 heads of Navy and Coast Guard from around the world for the 25th annual Sea Power Symposium. We're going to be talking about security through partnership and talking about interoperability be one of the main topics during the discussion. So again, I'm very focused on improving and increasing our interoperability with our partners all around the world because, again, strategic advantage is something our adversaries just don't have.
Yeah, and I don't know if Team Spirit is even an exercise anymore. It probably has a different name by now. And it used to be, you know, pretty much just us in South Korea, but you could see the need for, you know, naval exercise that is not only us, but it's our other allies in the region, Japan, South Korea, you know, Australia, that it could send a strong message about, you know, that we have allies and we're a capable force. Thank you. And I'll recognize Senator Budd.
Thank you, Chairman. Admiral, congratulations and thank you for being here. I enjoyed our conversation last week in my office. Out in Indo-PACOM, Admiral Aquilino, commander there, recently stated that his metric for success in a potential conflict is the ability to prosecute 1,000 targets in 24 hours. We talked about that. So can you talk a little bit about what the Navy's programs are, including manned and unmanned platforms, as well as munitions that will help enable them to do that? And I'm looking for as concrete examples as possible. So if you could differentiate between what the fleet has now and then what you're investing in, that would be very helpful.
Senator Budd, I appreciate our conversation the other day, and if confirmed, look forward to continuing to work with you. You know, the Navy, and I saw Admiral Aquilino's comments about that. Again, as we look at our Navy writ large, part of making ourselves a credible deterrent force is having those munitions that we need. In our presidential budget request this year, we have requested a significant increase in those munitions, and we really want to try to, in as much as we can, work with industry to max out their production lines. Some of the key munitions that we're investing in are our SM-6, our Tomahawks, our LRASM, our JASSM ERs, and again, solid rocket motors. These are areas that we need to invest in and continue to work with industry to max out those production lines, as well as Congress and the administration to get the resources we need to continue those investments.
Thank you, Admiral. You know, at the end of the day, I think we all want to deter conflict from happening in the first place. But the deterrent effect of our undersea warfare capability can't be understated, but we can't take it for granted. You mentioned in our meeting last week, as well as a few times this morning, that we need to produce at least 2 Virginia-class subs plus 1 Columbia-class sub per year. However, we're currently only producing 1.2 attack subs annually. So what are some concrete, and again, I emphasize that word, some concrete ways we can increase sub production, but also improve readiness rates of the existing submarine force?
Well, our undersea advantage is very critical, especially in the Indo-Pacific, but really globally. As far as production goes, we do need to increase our production of Virginia-class submarines. And if confirmed, I will work with industry partners in our broader community to make sure that we are giving them all the resources they need. I think 3 areas that we're really focused on, both in our public and our private shipyards, the private and public to do maintenance and production, they're all competing for workforce. It's not only the people, it's also the experience level. Mm-hmm. So we need to continue all our efforts to grow the workforce that works there. The second one is we really need to maximize the effectiveness of those shipyard workers using data analytics to map out processes, making sure they have all the tools they need to get more hours on the job every day. And then we also need to make sure that they have the spare parts and also a pool of equipment. And we've requested in our budget to develop this pool of materials and spare parts that they need to be able to move through these maintenance periods. When we did some analysis, and I've talked with a lot of project superintendents, they see one of their main choke points is not having the supply needed to be able to do these jobs. So a lot of supply chain effects, and I think we can work with them on that. More broadly, getting people across our nation interested in service in the shipyards as well as service to our nation, I think is a national effort that we should be undertaking.
Thank you, Admiral. You mentioned shipyards. What are you doing to improve cybersecurity, or what do you intend to do to improve cybersecurity in those shipyards for the Navy?
Well, cyber is a really challenging warfare area, and it is only going to get worse. We need to bake cyber resiliency into all of our platforms as we're designing them, and if confirmed, I'm committed to doing that.
So as a fiscal conservative who believes in the need to modernize our forces, at the same time, can you explain why the Navy is spending billions developing its own sixth-generation fighter while the Air Force is already heavily invested in the next-generation air dominance program? And the question behind that is, are there any opportunities for collaboration to improve both the speed of the program and economics here?
Senator, I'm very much in favor of collaborating on all of our joint capabilities, and if confirmed, I will look for opportunities to continue to collaborate with not only the Air Force, but all of the other sister services on weapons programs, similar to how we're doing with Army for our long-range strike hypersonic weapons.
Thank you. I believe my time has expired. I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you, Senator Blood. Senator Rosen, please.
Well, thank you, Chairman Reed, of course, Ranking Member Wicker for holding this hearing. And I'd really like to thank Admiral Franchetti for your service to our country and for meeting me this week because, you know, you have served our nation with distinction and honor. I want to acknowledge your husband, Jim, your daughter, Isabel, who also serve our nation as a military family. And I want to underscore, I know we've all talked about it, some of your accomplishments. Your professional accomplishments. It's evidence of how qualified you are, Admiral Franchetti, to serve as Chief of Naval Operations. Admiral Franchetti began her naval career as a surface warfare officer, serving on numerous ships in critical roles. During her time as a flag officer, she served all over the world in crucial roles, both inside and outside the Pentagon. Most notably, she has led the Navy's forces in both Europe and Africa as the head of the U.S. Sixth Fleet, and she has commanded not one, but two carrier strike groups at the same time. Admiral Franchetti, your deeply impressive career history is evidence that you are clearly well qualified to serve as Chief of Naval Operations and will break barriers as I want to say, I am so proud, the first woman to ever serve on the Joint Chiefs of Staff. But this is about more than just making history. This is about making our nation stronger, having diverse experiences and backgrounds in the rooms where decisions are made. Well, that makes us stronger and will make our military stronger. And it's past time that we have the first woman on the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And any efforts to stall or block this nomination, this role from being filled, will only hurt our military readiness. It will embolden our adversaries and harm our military families, your family. And that's why I call on the senator from Alabama to stop the political games and let us confirm you, Admiral Franchetti, along with the hundreds of other qualified nominees in the same way we've done for years. I look forward to that vote. Now I want to turn to quality of life at Fallon Naval Air Station. We talked about that because we are so proud to host the Naval Air Station Fallon. It's home to Top Gun, our nation's premier carrier air wing and SEAL training centers. While its location provides the necessary range space to ensure the fleet is deployable and operationally ready, the base is considered a remote duty installation with quality of life issues that accompany it. NAS Fallon has existing public-private venture with Lincoln Military Housing to build 172 new housing units to remedy their critical housing shortage, at least for sailors in the local community. However, Lincoln Military Housing has yet to fulfill its contractual obligations, and instead it has prioritized building in San Diego due to the relative cost advantage. So Admiral Franchetti, as we discussed in our meeting, how can we remedy this problem? If you're confirmed, will you commit to enforcing the contract with Lincoln Military Housing so that 172 units that our sailors need in Fallon, well, we need them as soon as possible.
Thank you, Senator Rosen, and thank you for your time. You know, quality of service for our sailors and for their families is a top priority for me as the vice chief. It was my #1 priority, along with shipyard maintenance. I am very focused on making sure that our sailors have what they need in terms of housing, in terms of childcare, in terms of everything, the resources they need for healthcare, the things they need to be able to do their jobs when called. I'm not familiar with the specific case of Lincoln that you've raised here, but I will take that for the record. And again, if confirmed, I understand the challenges of remote duty stations, and I will continue to focus on making sure that they have what they need so our sailors can do their jobs.
Thank you. And I want to move on quickly to some other issues we're having at Fallon. We discussed this, the range flooding. The Sheckler Reservoir right outside Fallon, Nevada, has experienced more frequent overflows in the past decade. It's causing flooding to Fallon's B-16 range, which is rendering it inoperable for ground combat training. While the Bureau of Reclamation owns the reservoir, its infrastructure and water flow impact Navy operations. And all while the Navy, of course, investing millions of dollars into range modernization. So again, Admiral Franchetti, if confirmed, can you commit to working with me and all the intergovernmental partners to route the water around our B-16 range so that no longer floods the range, halts training, and risks, of course, flooding to Fallon generally?
Senator, we learned a lot of the value of working with the intergovernmental agencies through our Fallon Range extension discussions, and if confirmed, I will continue to collaborate to make sure that we can use all those facilities.
Thank you. My time is up. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Rosen. Senator Kramer, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Admiral, for being here for our conversation the other day. Thank you for your service. Thank you to your family as well. When we all say it, we really all do mean it, individually and collectively. We just want you to know. So thank you for that. What I wanted to delve into has been pretty thoroughly covered, but maybe I'll just step back. It was interesting, as you could tell, the discussion that began with Senator Wicker as it relates to particularly, specifically to AUKUS, and then as it got broadened, I think, a little bit with Senator King talking about shipbuilding in general, particularly the places he's been. And by the way, I very much appreciated your comment about the national call to service, that the call to service isn't just the military, it's the entire value chain. And we talked a little bit about mission, and maybe we could expand a little bit on that. But I especially appreciated then Senator Kane's bringing more of a dynamic relationship or perhaps outcome if the next responsibility of Congress is taken seriously. How do our geopolitical friends and alliances actually add more value than just 1.2 to 2.2, Virginia's class subs per year? I just want to give you another minute to maybe elaborate a little more on that, because I think particularly in the workforce piece of it, you had some pretty profound things to say about how we can perhaps at least give it our best, right, to step things up so that we're meeting our needs as well as the needs of our allies.
Well, thank you again, AUKUS, and I appreciate your time and our conversation the other day. I am focused on, building relationships with all of our allies and partners. Again, they are a strategic advantage, and the more that we can work with them and share information, build interoperability, the stronger our nation and our Navy and all of our militaries will be. AUKUS is a particularly great once-in-a-generation opportunity to knit together these three really capable allies who we already work with moving forward. But as we look about to the national call of service and we think about things like navies, where you may only know about the Navy if you live in a coastal state where there's a naval base or near a big naval air station, we really do need to get our people out and about to have a conversation with America about everything that the Navy can offer them and focusing on our mission, our enduring mission of sea control, power projection, deterrence, and sea lift, as I mentioned earlier, as well as maritime security. I think that excites people about what we do, and we'll be able to bring people not only into the Navy, but into our defense industrial base, where we also need capability to maintain and deliver our submarines. We've got lots of opportunities to get out there into the high schools and middle schools even with STEM programs, a Sea Perch or RoboSub, or we have many other initiatives. And again, I think people getting excited about national defense will help us, not only for the military, but also for the nation.
Well, I do come from the center of the North American continent, literally. We have a monument to prove it. And there are many patriotic sailors from North Dakota, including some admirals and whatnot. But I appreciate what you're saying, and I want to help advocate and facilitate that, even in the middle of the continent. So thank you for that. I want to wrap up with something I didn't intend to do, but I'm sorry that so many of my colleagues want to drag uniformed officers into their political fights, and I'm sorry that that had to happen to you a little bit ago. But Senator Warren said, it is clear that Republicans don't care about our servicemen and women and their families. It's clear that we don't care about our adversaries and their allies. Do you believe that? That Republicans don't care about you and your families? I mean, that's a blanket statement that she made.
As a member of the military, I believe that everyone in Congress supports everyone in our military. As I said in my opening statement, I thank everyone for their support to our Navy sailors, our families, and our civilians.
I appreciate that. And then I'm going to ask you this question. Is it your understanding that if Secretary Austin were to lift or rescind the rule to have the military pay for access to abortions, that Senator Tuberville would lift his hold and we could go back to unanimous consent confirmations? Is that your understanding, that if that one person, the Secretary of Defense, would rescind that order, that we'd get exactly what our Democratic friends say they want?
I don't want to speak for Senator Tuberville or any other member of this committee, so I do not know what that outcome would be.
Okay, that's fair enough. It's my understanding that would do it. So one person, Secretary Austin, come on, do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Kramer. Senator Peters, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Admiral Franchetti, congratulations on your trailblazing nomination, and thank you to you and your family for your service over many years. Admiral, we had a chance to speak on the phone about a variety of issues. I appreciated that phone call. And one of the issues that we talked about was congressional investments in the frigate industrial base and the critical role that citizens are playing in my home state of Michigan, building the next generation frigate to ensure that the Navy can continue to outpace and outmatch our adversaries. Given shifts in U.S. policy to increase deterrence campaigns and operations in the Indo-Pacific, along with concerns for ensuring the frigate industrial base can guarantee the necessary quality of shipbuilding and technological advancements that we need, my question for you, ma'am, is if confirmed, what recommendations would you offer to speed up the innovation, the production and the fielding of the Navy's next generation Constellation-class frigate?
Well, thank you, Senator Peters, and thank you for your time the other day. You know, the frigate, I'm very excited about it. For most of my career, frigates were the workhorse of the Navy. We're planning to build 58 frigates, and they're going to play an invaluable role in our force. As far as the frigate, we are using a lot of lessons learned from previous ship procurements to make sure that we measure twice, cut once, do all of our land-based testing and integration ahead of time, and really make sure that we stay firm on the configuration management so we get a good ship built out on time, and then we have an opportunity to make sure that that is the ship and its capabilities and its design is what we need. And then once we have the opportunity to operate a couple of them, I feel that we will have the opportunity to look to moving that into multiple shipyards. And I think that will really speed up production at getting more players on the field in terms of frigates.
Very good. You know, on the topic of next-generation naval platforms, the war in Ukraine has highlighted the utility of, as well as the dangers posed by unmanned underwater vehicles. The Ukrainians have been using these platforms to great success, as you know, against the Russian Navy. Bloomberg recently published an article written by Admiral Stavridis, where he argued that the Great Lakes, given their size and their seclusion, provided what could be an ideal venue for testing and evaluation of these emerging technologies. So my question for you, ma'am, is if confirmed, could you walk me through how the Navy will advance technologies associated with underwater UUVs and how these maturing efforts in the Navy in this area may increase the need for some alternative locations, like perhaps the Great Lakes, to serve as a testing area for this future technology that is essential?
So unmanned capabilities, both under, on, and above the sea, play a critical role and will continue to play a critical role for the mix of capabilities we need to get after the pacing threat of China, but also other adversaries. For the last 2 years, we've had an unmanned task force that was designed to go out into the commercial industry, get an understanding of what capabilities are out there, marry that up with gaps that we have in the fleet, to be able to integrate them together and move forward in a lot of good experimentation. So if you look out into the Middle East, where our 5th Fleet is in Task Force 59, they've been able to do a significant number of operations and exercises using unmanned technology, both ours and with our allies and partners, to provide maritime domain awareness and knit together those pictures through a mesh network that gives us a good common operating picture for everything that's around. We're doing the same thing in 4th Fleet, and if confirmed, we're standing up the successor to the Unmanned Task Force, which would be a Disruptive Capabilities Office, to be able to look at these technologies further, not just unmanned, but lots of different technologies to give ourselves the advantage that we need. We'll certainly be looking for different venues to be able to test out these capabilities, and if confirmed, I will continue to do that with the team.
Great. Well, thank you, Admiral. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Peters. Senator Cotton, please.
Admiral, congratulations on your nomination, and thank you for your years of service, and thanks to your family for their support as well. The United States holds a significant advantage over China in submarine warfare. It's well known that attack submarines are expected to play a critical role in any fight in the Pacific. The current production rate, though, of Virginia-class submarines is only 1.2 per year. That's behind the Navy's stated goal of 2 per year. The AUKUS agreement to provide Virginia-class submarines to Australia will add to that burden. Have you seen evidence that the Virginia-class production rate will increase from 1.2 boats per year?
Thank you, Senator Cotton. Thank you for your time the other day. As I said in our call, undersea advantage is critical, especially in the Indo-Pacific. And as the Vice Chief, I was very focused on both our maintenance of our submarines, especially our attack submarines, getting them in and out of the shipyards on time, and working with industry to help them increase their production of our submarines. So yes, we are only at 1.2. We need to get up to about 2.2 for AUKUS. So again, continuing to partner with industry to get after their biggest challenges that's my focus. So working on workforce development, making sure that we can go out and recruit the people help them recruit the people that they need to do that is critically important. Data analytics to understand throughput through the shipyard so we can be more effective with the workforce that we do have. And then making sure that they have all of the long lead time materials, the parts, the spare parts that they need to be able to move through that production line very quickly. And in our budget, we have requested some of these parts in a rotatable pool of materials to make us more effective getting our ships and submarines out on time.
Given those steps, when does the Navy project that it will be able to go from 1.2 per year to 2.2 per year?
Well, I'll have to get with industry to talk with them about what their projection is. Again, industry has a huge role in this, in their modernization of their own industrial capacity. I'm grateful to the Congress for appropriating funds for us to be able to invest in that submarine industrial base And we'll continue to work with industry to get those projections.
Okay, since you mentioned that, the Navy will invest $2.3 billion between fiscal year '23 and fiscal year '27 to bolster the new construction industrial base for submarines. It sounds like a lot, $2.3 billion, but it's less than 3% of the $81 billion total set aside for submarines. Do you think 3% is enough for this kind of generational investment in our biggest advantage against China?
I think we need to continue, as you said, this is a big investment in our industrial base. As we continue to modernize our industrial base through our own SIOP program and continuing to work with industry to gain the capabilities they need to deliver our ships on time, that's my focus area. And as I continue to work to develop a balanced budget that gets after our really critical capabilities, including submarine warfare, I will continue to do that and provide that information to the Secretary and the Chairman.
How do you think industry might benefit from a bigger investment than just that 3% investment?
I would have to defer to the industry leaders and the CEOs on how they would plan to use that investment and how they would make sure that it is going to the production capabilities, but also the workforce development that they need to be able to increase their production capacity.
Okay. OSD CAPE and the Navy have recently completed a submarine industrial base 2025 study looking into the specifics of the plan and funding to achieve the AUKUS goal to develop at least 3 Virginia-class boats for Australia. Have you been briefed on the results of that SIB 25 study?
I have not yet been briefed on the study, but I will get briefed on it, and if confirmed, I will continue to work to better understand it and what we need to do with it.
It's a little surprising to me that in your current role and nominated role that you haven't been briefed on that yet. Do you know why CAPE and others in the department wouldn't have briefed you yet?
I think it's just my own bandwidth capacity right now. As you know, I'm performing the role of the Vice Chief of Naval Operations and the acting CNO right now, and as soon as I get back, I'll make sure I get that brief on my calendar.
Okay. Well, thank you. I think that is important for you to get briefed on it. Like I said, I'm disappointed the department has not already briefed you on it. I think they should. And for that matter, I think they should brief us on it as well, because we're in the same boat, so to speak, as you are. So I ask the chairman to take the steps necessary to ensure we get the same briefing that I believe the Admiral deserves as well. Thank you, Admiral.
Thank you, Senator Cotton, and that is an excellent recommendation, and we will follow up. Let me now recognize Senator Manchin.
Let me thank Senator Blumenthal for allowing me to ask the question very quickly before I have to go to another meeting. First of all, Admiral Franchetti, I want to thank you for your service. I want to thank your family for being here and supporting you, because I know the sacrifice is made both ways. And I admire that. Admiral Franchetti, we had a nice conversation. You have all the qualifications and you have the experience to do a terrific job, and we're going to be there to support you. But I think we work best, as Senator Cotton asked, is the more we're informed to be able to help constructively. I think you'll find all of us in a bipartisan way willing to do that. But what I want to talk about, because you've gone through so many areas here, with your experience, you have seen firsthand the evolution of the cyber domain and the progression our DOD and services have made to keep pace with the expanding field of cyber operations and their capabilities. So my question would be, if confirmed, how do you intend to bolster the Navy's cyber operations specialties and expand the scope and capacity of the Navy's cyber capabilities as to better enhance the joint force and our national defense?
Well, thank you, Senator Manchin, and thank you for your time. I enjoyed meeting you the other day. Cyber warfare is a critical domain that is only going to become more important going forward. If confirmed, I will continue to work to meet our Navy cyber responsibilities. As you may be aware, we just created a cyber designator for our officers and a rating for our enlisted people. And if confirmed, I want to ensure that these people are focused on cyber warfare all the time. This is what they joined the Navy to do. This is what they want to do. We need to make sure they have the training and the tools needed to be able to do their jobs and meet the mission requirements for both offensive and defensive cyber. And if confirmed, I will continue to focus on this area to make sure we have the right incentives in place to retain them, and also that they have good work environments to be able to do this job.
My only recommendation would be is making sure that we're interacting with all the other services, because sometimes we have a little territorial problems, you know, and now we have one hat, which really works well. And I'm very confident you'll be able to work within that domain and hold it together. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. And I'm very committed to working in a joint environment with Cybercom on this.
Thank you, Senator Manchin. Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Admiral, good to see you again. Congratulations on your nomination. I appreciated our discussion last week. I want to begin with kind of a big picture discussion about the Navy, and there's been a lot of press recently. Here's the New York Times from last week. Faced with evolving threats, the U.S. Navy continues to struggle to change. Here's from the National Review 2 weeks ago. Sea change, rebuilding the Navy for the Pacific. And then you and I talked about this very good 60 Minutes piece. Nora O'Donnell led that. At the end of that, or during that interview, it's very long, about 40 minutes on 60 Minutes, she asked the CNO, is the Navy in crisis? Shrinking the Navy when the Chinese Navy is increasing dramatically. My view, priorities mixed up. We got the climate change strategy 18 months ago and the 30-year shipbuilding strategy at midnight before the CNO's SECNAV's posture hearing, which is complete backwards priorities. Is the Navy in crisis? I think it is. A lot of people think it is. What's your view? And if you think it's not, what do you see as the biggest challenge and how do we address it?
Senator Sullivan, thank you again for the opportunity to meet with you last week. I enjoyed our conversation. The Navy is not in crisis. We are the most formidable Navy in the world, working together with our Marine Corps team.
We're shrinking.
We deliver options
Shrinking our surface fleet pretty dramatically. Is that a problem?
The Navy is not about a number of ships. The Navy is about capability. And that comes from many things. It comes from the number of ships we have. It has to do with the capabilities each individual ship has and how they knit together as a warfighting ecosystem, along with our joint partners and allied partners. We need to have the munitions, we need to have the people, and I'm confident that our Navy, if called today, would fight and win against any adversary.
So to my question on biggest challenge, biggest problem, and how you would fix it if confirmed, what is that?
The biggest challenge right now is getting more players on the field. I think that's a three-part problem.
Is that what you mean? So don't shrink the Navy?
So
what
I mean
more
is
players on the field?
we have a lot of ships that are tied up in maintenance right now.
Okay.
And we need to continue. We're moving in the right direction, but I'm not satisfied with that. And if confirmed, I will continue our efforts to make sure that we get our ships in and out of maintenance on time so they can join the fleet and be ready to fight and win.
Well, one thing that I think has been problematic with the Navy is the responsiveness to this committee and our oversight role. Some of us, myself included, take this very seriously. I just received from the CNO and the SECNAV just a couple of weeks ago the questions for the record that I asked them in April at their posture hearing. So it took a half a year for them to get back to me, and the answers weren't even responsive. I had asked Secretary Del Toro, I know you were asked it today, I'd like you to answer it. Congress has given you multi-ship procurement authorities over the past 3 NDAAs, but you've never used it for amphibs. Why won't you use it? That was a question, and the answer was a cut and paste from another answer. Didn't even answer it. And it took a half year to get that. It's ridiculous. So can I get your commitment, if confirmed, that you can step up the Navy's game to make sure when we are doing oversight, which the Navy needs, that you're actually responsive? Because right now I think you've been failing on that.
Senator, you have my commitment to respond to all the requests from the committee in a timely manner.
Not a half year? Is that timely, a half year?
That is not an acceptable amount of time.
Thank you. And to the question of using your multi-year procurement authorities, what of that? You haven't used them yet.
Senator, if confirmed, and I will get back to you on that, I want to take a little bit more time to really understand and study that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'm almost out of time here. I'm going to ask one more question, and then I might stay for a second round if that's okay. Admiral, you and I had an extensive discussion, and again, to me, this is just an unacceptable lack of following the law by the leadership of the Navy on the issue of 31 amphibs. This committee held many hearings on it, worked with the Navy, worked with the Marine Corps, and put into law last year this, which is now the law. The Naval Combat Forces of the Navy shall include not less than 11 operational aircraft carriers and not less than 31 operational amphibious warships, of which not less than 10 shall be amphibious assault ships. That's the law. It was unanimous, by the way, in this committee. And when the Secretary of the Navy brought us his 30-year shipbuilding plan at midnight before his hearing in April, in 30 years, the Navy never hits 31 amphibs. It's kind of shocking to me. Are you going to hit 31 amphibs according to the law? And let me ask another question. Does the Navy or OSD, or heck, even the President for that matter, have the discretion after reading the law and looking at Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, which gives the Congress the power to provide and maintain a Navy? Are you going to hit that number? I mean, you don't have an option.
Senator, our amphibious forces are a critical part of the naval force, and I am very committed to working with the Marine Corps. And General Smith, he defines a requirement for the force.
No, we defined it.
As he,
Chairman, it is a really important issue.
As he communicates the need for the size of the force that he needs. We have 31 amphibs today, and if confirmed, I'm committed because we have a validated need for 31 amphibs in addition to it being a law. So if confirmed, I will continue to work with the Commandant and with the Secretary to ensure that we meet the requirements of 31 amphibs.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Blumenthal, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here. Thanks for your patience. Thanks to your family as well as you for your service, your husband, Jim, your daughter, Isabel, favorite name of mine because it happens to be my mother-in-law's. So, but most important, thank you for your decades-long service to our country. You and I discussed recently the need for more support for our sailors in all spheres of quality of life, but most especially when their ships are in port for maintenance, long-term maintenance, which requires them to live somewhere. And for Xavier Sandor, it meant living on a ship that was in a sense a construction site without water, quiet, other kinds of tolerable conditions. You and I both know his story and others who took their own lives because of these conditions, and I appreciate your support for the provisions of the Seaman Xavier Sandor Support for Sailors Act, which is included in this year's NDAA. I look forward to Congress approving the NDAA, but I want to ask you again, as we did during our conversation, about your commitment to the need to better care for our sailors in those circumstances, but also provide for adequate housing and counseling for them, which is the thrust and purpose of the measure that Senator Murphy and I have sponsored in the name of Xavier Sandor, and his family's courage and support have inspired us to pursue this issue, and I hope it will you too.
Senator Blumenthal, thank you very much, and thanks for our conversation yesterday. I really appreciated it. So mental health is health, and as someone who has experienced suicide in my own immediate family, there is no one more committed to providing our sailors and their families the resources they need to deal with all of the challenges that they face. As we think specifically about the shipyards and our quality of service, as the Vice Chief, I was appointed by the Secretary of the Navy and the CNO to lead a cross-functional team to dig deep into all of the challenges that our sailors face there. We leveraged the results from several different investigations to go through all of the recommendations, and we've made some good progress. And if confirmed, I will make sure that we continue that progress. One of the key things that we put together is really a mental health playbook that gives leaders at every level all of the information they need, from having good conversations to being able to connect people to the resources they need. And this is being used throughout the fleet, and it's having an impact. But more than that, we need to continue to have high-quality standards for livability and habitability in our shipyards before they move back on board the ship. We are working to move every sailor in an industrial environment off the ship so they have that, as you mentioned, quiet place to regenerate when they're not working. We have embedded mental health closer to all of our sailors in the shipyard, as well as other health resources. We're putting chaplains on every one of our ships, and we're continuing to hire mental health providers. I know it's a national challenge to do that, but we're committed to doing that. So again, you have my commitment that I will continue to work on this if confirmed.
I appreciate that answer. I want to ask you a question about Ukraine, which perhaps you can begin to answer here, but supplement in a written response. There has been a lot of reliance on the Army, our Army, to train Ukrainian warfighters. Our special operators and the Army have been principally involved. I don't know how much involvement there has been by the Navy in our support for Ukraine, but a lot of the missiles and other threats to Ukraine have been fired from Russian ships off the coast. And I wonder whether there is more armament that the Navy could be providing to counter, for example, the Harpoon missiles and so forth, counter those airstrikes from the Russian Navy in the Black Sea or the Sea of Azov or wherever the ships are placed.
But Senator, the Navy has had a long-standing relationship with the Ukrainian Navy as Sixth Fleet. I had many opportunities to go and work with the Ukrainian Navy, especially in one of our exercises called Sea Breeze. The Navy continues to support the presidential drawdown authorities and look for resources that could be used for Ukraine. And I will take that for the record to go back and look if there are any additional records. But again, we are following the support to the presidential drawdown authorities.
If you could take it for the record, and without saying whether the Navy would or should provide it, because I recognize you can't go beyond the administration, but talking hypothetically, what could be used that is not being used now? And there may be reasons not to use or provide those arms. So I'm not asking you to endorse the actual provision of specific weapons platforms, but just to give me an idea of what hypothetically could be provided. Thank you.
Yes, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal. Senator Sullivan has assured me he has just two more questions.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Sullivan, you're recognized.
Admiral, you and I had the opportunity to talk about force design and Marine Corps force design, and it's a bold initiative by the Marine Corps. It's not without its own controversy, but a big component of that is its focus on joint expeditionary ops with the Navy. And one of my issues with the previous CNO is that seemed a bit of a one-way street. The Marine Corps' focus is a lot on working really, really closely with the Navy, but in a lot of the Navy's strategy documents, it doesn't seem to be that reciprocated. My own view is if the Navy's not fully on board with Marine Corps force design, stand-in force combat concepts, that will fail. More specifically, the landing ship mediums are essential to the Marine littoral regiments operating as stand-in forces and conducting expeditionary advanced base operations. The 2024 budget includes just 6 LSMs being ordered over the next 5 years, which wouldn't even support one Marine littoral regiment, let alone the 3 that are planned in force design. How will you advocate for resources more effectively than your predecessor to ensure production of LSMs in support of the Marine Corps force design?
Senator Sullivan, as we discussed, I'm very supportive of Force Design 2030, and I'm very committed to working with General Smith as they continue to iterate on that very important concept. I think one of the challenges is with our strategy documents is that Force Design came out. At the same time, we were generating a lot of our strategy documents that you may have seen.
Yeah.
But as we look forward in our own Force Design document, the Marine Corps and Force Design is totally integrated into that, and I'm fully committed to supporting the Marine Corps as they evolve in this chain. As far as the landing ship mediums, we have working with the Marine Corps to set a requirement for 18 initially.
Okay.
So again, we can get those ships out, iterate on the concept, and make sure that it's what they need before we move forward. And I'm committed to working with the Commandant to do that.
So the 18, that's obviously up from the 6 that was in the FY24 budget?
No, the 18 total, to make sure that we have the requirements right before we move on to their follow-on goal, which is about 35, if I have that correct.
Okay. Let me ask one final question to the chairman's keeping on time with my 2 questions. This one is, we discussed it, and to be honest, I've not asked a question in a hearing on it, but to be when I first looked just this morning at the CNO's, previous CNO's reading list, and there was a lot of controversy on one book in particular, How to Be an Anti-Racist. But actually, when I looked at it, I was kind of shocked to see almost half the reading on that CNO's reading list under the topic of sailors, which there are several different topics, is on racial politics. So how to be an anti-racist, that's one. Why we can't talk about that at work, how to talk about race, religion, politics, and other polarizing topics, that's another. Sexual minorities and politics, the new Jim Crow, mass incarceration in the age of colorblindness. You know, I have no problem with sailors reading these kind of books on their free time, but as you know, the Commandant or the CNO's reading list is something that's quite serious, and in my experience with service reading lists, it usually relates to lethality, warfighting, the history of the Navy, biographies, heritage. There are thousands of books like that sailors could learn from. I have a theory on why these kind of books got on the reading list, and I'm going to ask it. I have time, Mr. Chairman. This is an important question, actually. Probably had some, campaign operative for the Biden administration, get a job in the Pentagon, took a class on national security in college, and now he thinks he's going to tell the Navy what's good for them, right? How do you think these kind of things got on the reading list? And can you commit to me, if confirmed, for your reading list to focus traditionally on what most reading lists, almost all reading lists, history, culture, warfighting, naval history. Like I said, you and I talked about a bunch of really good books. I don't know why there's so much focus on race. You can read it on their off time, but it seems to me a real missed opportunity when the Navy's probably the most, deep culture, heritage, great history, that sailors should learn about that before reading all this stuff, in my view. What's your view? And can you commit to me to get back to what should be on normal reading lists for sailors or Marines?
Senator Sullivan, again, thank you for the book. And, as I told you in the office call, I'm very focused on warfighting, warfighters, and winning. I don't know the process by which books are on the CNO's reading list, but if confirmed, I will develop a process and I will focus on warfighting, warfighters, and winning.
Thank you. I mean, it's your reading list, right? So you can put whatever, my respectful advice, you get some, far left civilian who somehow found a job at the Pentagon, never served in the military. I guarantee you that's what happened here. pushing this agenda, I would politely tell them to pound sand and that you're going to focus on warfighting, heritage, and lethality. And I think that's a safe place for you to be, and I think it's the place most Americans want the CNO of the Navy to be on the CNO's reading list. Thank you.
Thank you,
Mr.
Senator Sullivan. Admiral, thank you for your testimony today. You've demonstrated that you have the skill, the experience, and the patriotism to lead the United States Navy, and I know you could not have done it without your family beside you. So I wish you, what do they call them, calm seas? I'm a West Pointer. I don't know what the...
Fair winds
Fair
and
wind.
following seas.
I wish you fair winds and following seas, and I wish you a speedy confirmation, and I'd be proud to support your nomination. With that, I will adjourn the hearing.